All right. Good day, everyone. Welcome to another special edition of the Data Resilience Podcast, where we're continuing our conversations with IBM's partnership capabilities that we're doing with certain folks within the industry who add technology capability value propositions to the overall IBM Data Resilience portfolio. Today, we're talking to AvePoint, and today I have Mario with me. So, Mario, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Steve. Well, first, let me again thank you for inviting me on your show. And I also want to thank the IBM team for this great partnership. So, as you mentioned, my name is Mario Carvajal, and I've been with AvePoint for a number of years. I currently serve as the Chief Strategy Officer. And in that role, it's really a multifaceted role, but I've been with the organization for about 14 years now. And it's been a great journey, and we're doing fantastic work. And I'm glad to actually be working again with IBM. I recall early in the days when I joined AvePoint, there was a key partner that was really important to a lot of our wins, and that was IBM. We had been doing a lot of work with TSM for SharePoint, for those of you that have been in the SharePoint space for a while. And so it's been great to engage again with the IBM team and really find where we could continue to add value to the Spectrum Protect portfolio.
Great. Thanks, Mario. We're talking today about AvePoint. So can you tell us about who AvePoint is and how they came to be in the market as an IBM technology partner?
Sure, absolutely. So we are a organization. First off, AvePoint is a product vendor, a technology company. We've been around for over a decade, about 20 years or so. The company was founded in 2001, and we really focus our efforts on helping organizations collaborate with confidence. We are the largest Microsoft 365 and SharePoint data management solution provider, and we've spent a lot of time really building applications that help organizations migrate, manage, and protect their data, not only in Microsoft 365, but as I mentioned before, SharePoint. And we also have been extending our reach. And today you'll find in our product line that we also support G Suite and as well as Salesforce and a few other sources. I would also add that it's been important for us to really be at the center of what's been happening with organizations that are transforming a lot of their technology stack and the delivery of their applications to the market and to their customers. And so we have really built over the 20-year history a comprehensive product line that addresses hybrid scenarios as well as fully cloud scenarios. And we have an extensive reach into our channel partners as well by making sure these applications are also managed service provider friendly.
Great, thanks. Can you tell me, where's AvePoint located and kind of how are you guys distributed? Just North America, throughout the world?
Absolutely. We are headquartered, and I'm actually speaking to you today from our headquarter office in Jersey City, New Jersey. We actually have, over the time I've been here helping grow the business, we've been able to reach a global footprint. We have 88 different countries that we serve with physical location: Australia, France, Germany, Japan, LATAM, Singapore, Spain, and the list goes on. We've been instrumental in helping organizations that are multinationals. And so that really was important from the beginning. Today, you find that we not only have local resources that are, of course, sales, but we also have technology-oriented individuals, professionals, so that when we're working with our customers and partners, they receive support from a team that really understands needs, the culture, the fit of a given market.
I think that's what makes AvePoint such a great technology partner with IBM, because they are, worldwide great resources, both on the sales side, both on the tech sales side, to help us kind of wherever we deliver our solutions, our joint solutions together. So that's fantastic. Mario, tell me what a chief strategy officer does at AvePoint.
Sure. Well, I actually have the privilege of being seated in a vantage point where I get to see all aspects of the business. I provide leadership in driving the strategy and growth of many of our initiatives that are helping us grow the company. So my role is multifaceted. I actually grew up in the technology side of my profession. I started off as a developer. When I first joined the organization, I really saw an opportunity to partner with the founders and start thinking about how do we really express our capability to customers. Over the years here, I've served different leadership roles. And as I look at the business today, my experience in product sales, marketing, and operations really allow me to partner with our top leaders and make sure that we're synchronizing all our initiatives so that we're able to effectively be a better service provider to our customers as well as a great partner. And I also am spending a lot of time most recently really developing a strategy alongside our CEO for M&A activity, which is really important for our growth. So I tend to be very busy, Steve, but I still love to be industry facing. Any opportunity I get to meet a customer, to participate in strategy sessions or architectural design sessions, I sort of team up with our account teams, our pre-sale teams, and as much as possible, I do try to be out there meeting customers and partners at events. Obviously, this past year, as you well know, has been a very different shift to how we work. So we all have to sort of realign ourselves. But I'm happy that we're moving forward, and hopefully in this role, I can continue to facilitate as much as I can the conversations that are happening out on market with our internal leaders. The last thing I'll mention is prior to my role as Chief Strategy Officer, I had the privilege of being AvePoint CTO for over 7 years. And that was a really fantastic way to really study the way we were going to market and work extensively with our R&D team, especially during the phase where we started transitioning our technology to be more of a sort of SaaS solution portfolio.
So they can't take the technologist out of the strategy. You're always going to be involved with the customers, and I think that's a good thing. I think that's how we all grow and learn. I find myself doing some of the same kinds of things, making sure that we're talking to customers and understanding the challenges going on. So I want to talk to you a little bit. You mentioned SharePoint. You mentioned Office 365, or I should say you mentioned Microsoft 365, obviously a growing segment of the market space. And as you mentioned, talking with customers, continuously leveraging the Microsoft platform as a enterprise, critical platform. And even before the 365 platform came out, folks were using Microsoft and products and solutions and technologies. Tell us, maybe before you get into specifically what AvePoint does, but what did AvePoint see in the marketplace that decided you guys needed to build a company? What problems were you trying to solve and address for customers?
Sure, it's a great question. And you're sort of taking me down memory lane for a bit. The most interesting thing for us was when we went out to market, and I'm really giving you a sort of a look into our history from about 2007 when I teamed up with the founders. We were addressing a few pain points. Enterprise applications were still critical in how employees would engage with one another, manage projects internally, et cetera. And Microsoft was doing a fantastic job in bringing to market their SharePoint sort of application to service this need. What we saw as an immediate need was how do we help these organizations, sustain the needs of the business by making sure the application stack was readily and available. And change management was at the core of this. How do you deal with growing business demand? How do you change the infrastructure? And out of those needs, we began developing the DocAv platform. And so immediately, as we were going out to market and listening to customers, SharePoint farms were critical in how employees would communicate, as I mentioned before. But we also started seeing line of business applications being built and designed on SharePoint. What it allowed for us was an opportunity to think of, well, what else happens in that change management lifecycle? How do you modify, let's say, for instance, permissions or access control? How do you help an organization that may have employees that are physically remote get the reach to that information? And so our platform really concentrated mostly on managing the data through that lifecycle. starting with the backup and recovery motion. We then looked at externalizing content for storage optimization needs. And then we also looked at the administration and configuration side. So it was a really nice narrative and a storyboard that allowed us to continue innovating. So that really is where a lot of it began for us. And then as we started working with organizations that were looking at public cloud infrastructure or building data centers that were now going to service a lot of their subsidiary locations, we began thinking, well, how else can we deliver this application? How else can we offer resiliency? And so over the years, we've kept the same, sort of point of view, follow the data, look at the life cycle of data, but more importantly, never forget that disaster recovery and data resiliency will be at the center. Business continuity, especially today, and what we saw last year with the pandemic, organizations struggle at times to be effectively responding to the change. And so when you have an application, a centralized management console that you can sort of take a look and start to take action, it brings you a bit of confidence, and also it puts you in a position of control. So from the beginning, that's always been our point of view. IT operations is also a model that has changed throughout the years. And as that model has changed, we've looked to make the application less engineering centric, more self-service. Today, you'll find in the product a lot of wizards, a lot of guided experience, so that you're not sitting there trying to, figure out all these different options. The application is aware of the environment and therefore can make decisions on your behalf. So I think that evolution has been somewhat natural for us and organic. And we've been very fortunate to be at the center of what SharePoint and Microsoft have done for the collaboration space. And then, of course, as you just mentioned, once they started really building the M365 set of services, that sort of world for organizations, expanded.
I like your phrase, follow the data. It's kind of like follow the money, right? It makes a lot of sense. And over the course, I think, of the last couple of years, IBM's been evolving their messaging. I really appreciate your notion around resilience, right? So there's protection, but at the end of the day, what people want today is that function around resilience, right? How can they ensure that they can protect the business, make sure that in the event that something does happen, because we all know something's going to happen, whether it be an internal threat, a cyber threat, a disaster, an unforeseen disaster, something's going to happen. So let's plan for that. Let's make sure we're ready to attack that and help us get back up and running. But also, I think there's a piece in that word resilience that also means flexibility. In other words, how can I make sure that just because I have this data, I'm not locking it down so that the business can't do its job and be competitive? I got to make sure that folks who need access to that information can do so in a secure, reliable way, so that we can be competitive, we can get our jobs done, and that sort of thing. I had a question about you talk about DocAv and the DocAv platform. Can you tell me a little bit, maybe expound upon that? Is that a product? Is that a platform that offers different solutions? I'd just like to understand how it integrates with the IBM solution.
Sure, so it is a platform, and the platform is designed. First off, there's a lot of speaking of flexibility, there's a lot of flexibility in how we can deliver the platform experience. We have organizations that have security needs, and so they prefer private data center implementation, so it works there. But organizations that also oftentimes will say to us, well, we're working with a managed service provider and we like the provider to operate the application stack. And is there a way for us to stand up the platform in the cloud? We can certainly do that as well. And we have great partnerships where we can deliver that. So I think with IBM, what we've been able to situate is more flexibility for our mutual customers. And the idea is that you, in the platform, are able to address scenarios for disaster recovery planning. You're able to look at how do you maintain application consistency across the data set with the way we approach our backups. And then more specifically, bringing agility back to IT really comes down to granular recovery. So you can go in and look at your data structure and recover. I think this complements very well what Spectrum Protect is all about. And so when you think about those three perspectives, the application, the platform, to answer your question, has been designed with the role-based access. And this allows us to work with organizations and ask, how is your operational model? In some cases, as I mentioned before, there could be a third party that's part of that operational model, or it could be all in-house. And then in many cases, a granular recovery request, for instance, could be something that you prefer a business user to do. And so our application really introduces wizards, and it allows us with Spectrum Protect to look at different personas that we can support. On the one side, the business user may just want to put a simple request. I don't care what my data is. I just need to find a file, help me find a file. And through a sort of self-service experience, we can do that. And on the other side of the spectrum, if you have a more sophisticated need, like DR planning, for instance, then IT operations can go into the application and look at the infrastructure and actually, configure different jobs, scheduling, so that the DR planning can coexist with other strategies the company may have. And then I would also mention that it's important that we understand on-premise applications are still mission critical for many organizations. Even though, as you and I both know, the talk in the last few years has all been about cloud, cloud, cloud. I think what we're still seeing is that organizations are sort of bimodal. They think about, how can I remain resilient with my service providers out of pocket? When you think about the outages last year from some of the big players like Microsoft, Amazon, and Google, that reemphasized the importance to have a platform like this. And so our story as we go to market with Spectrum Protect is that we are looking at hybrid as a sustainable pattern in how organizations deploy and implement. And you're better served when you have an application approach that supports that for operating your environment and maintaining that resiliency.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely come to pass that there's no one right answer anymore, right? There's cloud applications, and everybody seems to want to preach, hey, let's go to the cloud. But a lot of folks, you find they go to the cloud, they can't solve a lot of the problems, so they got to bring it back on-prem. So it is this hybrid world that we live in, and it's going to be that way for a very, very long time. And some data just can't leave the organization, and they're going to need to be able to have capabilities to be able to protect that information, secure that information, provide disaster recovery for that information, run the full gamut for it. So, I was going to say, is there any kind of one thing that we should be looking for as a partner with AvePoint to key buzzwords that come up that fulfill a need that we can fill together? But it seems like there's quite a few.
There is. I mean, I think that when we think about our story together, our teams have done a great job. And one of there's three key areas we want to emphasize. One is, how do you reduce on-premise overhead with let's say cloud hosting or private data center hosting? And the answer to that is make sure you're looking at a solution that's hybrid aware, that can also look at how you store information, how you archive information, and give you agility. The second would be a scale to support multiple global hybrid deployments. So again, this multi-instance capability, especially for multinationals, which, as we know well with IBM's reach into market, we have customers that don't want to be concerned with, well, if I have an application, do I need to replicate that infrastructure over if I need to service a different region of the world? Most folks don't think that way anymore. Instead, some of the demands are, does your application or your solution really support hybrid environments in a global instance? And the answer is yes, we can. This platform really has an agent server architecture. It works across cloud VMs, or as I mentioned before, VMs that are still on-prem or physical servers in some cases. And this idea of managing multiple instances and understanding the data structure and consistency is important. The role-based access that I mentioned before is also critical, especially for regions of the world that have strict compliance regulations or regulatory requirements. And then the last point is ongoing changes. So change management. How do you deploy? How do you manage the solutions, workflows, all these different components that are part of that experience that we're delivering to the user? And so quickly deploy, update, and manage SharePoint workflows, for instance, solutions, policies. That's all part of the application, all part of the Spectrum Protect value prop. And we're able to help organizations, again, just concentrate on the problem and rest assured that as they configure the application over time also becomes more self-aware, sees what changes are going on, and through some dashboards and reporting capability can put teams in a more proactive sort of mindset, which is what companies really are looking for. So those are the three main areas of value, and we'll continue working on with the Spectrum Protect team to ensure that as customers deploy, we start seeing how they're experiencing the solution. We continue to reemphasize the ease of use and also these multi-persona support that we are building into the application.
So why Spectrum Protect? Why did you guys pick that platform?
Well, I think there's a number of, as I mentioned before, we had a great experience with IBM, with an initial partnership. We had a go-to-market partnership, early days of SharePoint. And we worked extensively with the team. And so there was a sort of great synergy in the vision and values of the organizations. So that's number one, right? You always have to make sure that it's a people business first before it's a technology business. But also, we see the work that IBM has done with Spectrum Protect in the space, and we believe that achieving maximum success is really something you do with partnerships. And so when we really sort of thought about that, we said, this relationship makes sense for us. It's the right relationship. Naturally, the customer base of IBM is fantastic. And as I said before, since we're also in a global footprint, IBM was really a good fit for this partnership. And this is probably just the beginning. There are many more things we've planned. We've been talking extensively about also how do we think about the data as it leaves the private data center once it goes out there. How do we look at the third-party providers, the content service providers, and how do we make that story fulsome? And so we'll continue to study that closely and find ways to introduce more into this joint partnership.
I'll tell you, I for one am really excited. I think that IT today, or the data center today, has gotten so complicated and so complex that I don't think there's any one vendor that can solve 100% of all clients' problems. So I think the best way to do that is to pick great partners, smart partners. I like the fact that you say you guys are going to continue to investigate certain aspects and areas of kind of how the data moves and flows in different areas. And, we're going to stay true to the course and focus on the resiliency sets of capabilities. And then the partnership becomes, like Reese's, two great tastes that taste great together, right? Hopefully. So, right. Can you tell me a little bit about maybe you talked a lot about the different use cases and the things to kind of pay attention for? Maybe a customer example, or at least some examples of where we've partnered together in the field that have really brought some value to a client?
Absolutely. We have, there's been a few cases. One top of mind is we see still a lot of mission critical applications, as I mentioned before, running on SharePoint in the public sector and local agencies. We've had really a good experience with the IBM team helping an organization that was looking at about 4 terabytes of production content that had a lot of information that was part of their record management strategy. And the biggest concern was, is this information secure? What happens to the life cycle of that information? How do we treat it? And also they had on their sort of project timeline, a shift to the cloud. Some of that data was also going to be moving to the cloud too, and I'm referring to Microsoft 365. So there was a workload of migration we had to consider, and they loved the idea of granular restore. They also wanted platform level backup. So it was a couple of combination of factors that led us to realize that, hey, this is a great fit for AvePoint and IBM Protect to come in together. So we concentrated on first emphasizing that we could deliver a very aggressive service level agreement for backup and recovery with our incremental capability and our, as I mentioned before, granular restore capability. So that brings value to the business immediately. So that's super important. The next thing we looked at was a retention. How do we really help on the retention schedule? Records management strategies often carry stringent requirements on retention, and they need more flexibility. So retention really ensures that we maintain enough backups. And they also had, restrictions around storage. So it was a good balance of how much do we retain without killing, the cost or sort of the budget. And also, how do we do all of this and even leverage or think about external storage? So the solution we put together for that perspective also included the ability to apply different retention policies with a choice of different storage locations. And again, all this is done from the same platform, same application. And then the last thing we wanted to showcase was how do we bring the information back in an event of an outage or data corruption. So site restores were critical. We showed how we can do in-place restores and out-of-place restores. And that really gave them great confidence that if there was an outage, they could deliver content back to the business and avoid a long outage or blackout period. They also had some SharePoint issues with their data and content organizer rules that were not functioning or behaving opposite to what they were really expecting. And the team expressed to us, they've been working with Microsoft and they really couldn't solve that. And so we showed them how with some restore capabilities, once those organizational rules get out of whack, restore capabilities can reestablish that and the application would still perform correctly. And so that also was critical for them. And so at the end, they came back and said, wow, this is addressing a number of pain points for us. And ultimately, we were able to, again, bring this joint value proposition. And as I said earlier, when we work with organizations in these projects, there's never an end to the project. You just kind of continue. Next for us is really helping them think about what happens in the migration journey. And so again, this introduces the hybrid scenario. And so we'll continue exploring that. And this is how we want to be, good partners to clients. We want to not just be there at the beginning of the journey. We certainly want to stay and then, get into that optimizing the relationship phase of the relationship.
Great. Thanks, Mario. I appreciate that. So folks, we're entering into this partnership with AvePoint as we have with a couple other vendors, and this is why we're doing the podcast. As you know, because of these relationships, AvePoint will now be in IBM's price book. So IBM sellers and business partner sellers that are out there selling IBM solutions can also complement the solution when clients have a need for anything that AvePoint can deliver with their DocAv solution set. So now when you get an RFP and you're wondering how do we actually solve that problem, we've got another great way to be able to solve challenges that customers come up with. As I've mentioned before, we're going to have all of the assets that we put together along with this podcast, but also data sheets, white papers, added capabilities to our talking points around data resilience in the marketplace and how we go about that with our business partners, all loaded up in Seismic. So I encourage you all to watch the podcast, understand what AvePoint does, have the ability to go into Seismic, download and utilize those sheets with your customers when you find that you're trying to uncover some problems and some challenges. Mario, I want to thank you very, very much for attending today. And any parting words for us? Anything we should be keeping in our mind?
Well, yeah, first, thank you, Steve. And I also want to take a moment to thank your colleagues at IBM for working with us. We are equally excited to not only take on this venture, but also explore where else there's a fit. What I would say is that transformation is still at the center of the mindset of many top leaders. And the best that we can do is remove friction from that transformation. And protecting information, how end users or third parties providers access information becomes more critical now, especially when we have to come back to most likely a hybrid working environment as well. So I would say that we are going to look at introducing more capabilities into this partnership We're going to look at other ways in which we can help optimize and reduce costs. We know many of our clients are also very cost conscious. And the beauty of this is that we have the opportunity to really implement more capabilities efficiently, because we're looking at artificial intelligence, which is really going to give us more of a proactive look at how to address problems. Instead of spending a lot of time, troubleshooting, the systems will really tell us what are the symptoms and predict where there might be outages and issues. So those are the types of capabilities which I know a lot of the field team and the sellers really appreciate, because they speak to what the business cares about. And so we hope to work on this effort, and hopefully we'll come back on your podcast and update the teams, and then bring more customer stories so that we can continue to really feel great about the work we're doing as a team.
Well, I'd love to have you back. Two great pieces of advice: follow the data, remove the friction. I love it. Thanks, Mario, and thank you, everyone. And until the next SpectrumCast, have a great day.
Thank you.